is Erica Lyon, Agriculture and Natural Resources Educator for Ohio State University Extension here in Jefferson County. You've probably started to notice that the leaves on a lot of the trees across the county have started to turn their vibrant fall colors. With fall here, many of us are wrapping up the growing season. However, it's not too early to start planning for next year's growing season. And one of the things gardeners should pay attention to when ordering plants for next year is plant hardiness. Not all plants are hardy in Ohio. Even among cultivars, there are variations in hardiness. A lot of this is tied to plant genetics. This may seem like common sense, but hardiness is a critical genetic trait to look for when purchasing your plants. If you are purchasing from mail order companies or nurseries, make sure to check where that plant is coming from. Plants from states such as Florida that tend to have more tropical climates are probably going to send you plants that are not as hardy for Ohio. So even within a species, this is true. Roots, buds, leaves, stems, flowers, and fruit are also hardy to different temperatures. For example, buds tend to be the least hardy, which is why early frost can be so devastating in gardens. Roots and perennial plants tend to be fairly hardy. This is why perennial plants will die back in the winter, but because of the root system, it's able to spring back to life in the springtime. Some examples of plants that have both hardy and tender cultivars for Ohio include hibiscus and geraniums. Turn of the century Copper King, Luna Pink Swirl, and Luna White Hibiscus are considered to be excellent perennials for Ohio gardens, while tropical hibiscus need to be brought indoors during the winter months, otherwise they won't survive. Cranesbill geraniums such as Roseanne and Patricia are also okay to plant in Ohio as perennials. That's not to say you can't plant apple blossom rosebud geraniums, just remember to move them indoors during the winter or grow them as annuals. How do we know or determine plant hardiness? Well, first off, we need to know our area's hardiness zone. Hardiness zones are geographic areas that share a range of average annual minimum winter temperatures. There are also hardiness resources out there that will list maximum temperatures of those plants as well, or the maximum temperature those plants will tolerate. To find your area's hardiness zone, visit planthardiness.ars.usda.gov. You can visit the interactive maps to click on specific locations to see what the zone rating is. For example, if we click where Knox County is, the hardiness zone is rated at 5B, which is one of the coldest zones in Ohio, with an average winter minimum temperature between -15 degrees Fahrenheit to -10 degrees Fahrenheit. If we look at the Columbus area, it is rated at zone 6A, or ranging between -10 and -5 degrees Fahrenheit. Keep in mind that urban areas can be slightly warmer than the surrounding rural locations in what is called a heat island effect, and this can affect which plants are hardy in these areas. If we visit southern Ohio or Jefferson County, we see that the zone is rated at 6B, with a minimum annual temperature range of -5 to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Hardiness zones are based on averages. You may still experience years where temperatures drop below the average for a geographic area in which typically these hardy plants would die off. While the USDA Hardiness Zone tool is valuable, we still need to realize that there are limitations to its applications. For example, it doesn't factor in length of time or duration of extreme cold temperatures, nor does it factor in heat tolerances of plants. Rapid changes in temperature can also be substantially more stressful to plants than gradual change, even if the minimum temperature range is not met. And the frequency of temperature extremes reached matter as well. Humidity, drought, and other environmental stressors will also affect plants' hardiness. On the flip side, soil moisture and snow cover can actually act as buffers to some of these stressors. Microclimates are conditions in small areas that differ from the general surroundings. They are often caused by structures, trees and shrubs, or other features that can potentially serve as protected locations compared to wind and sun exposed sites. Eastern Ohio has many microclimates due to the hilly terrain. Microclimates can be influenced by sun, wind, slope, proximity to buildings, which I had previously mentioned, and these buildings also absorb or lose heat. So that can actually be very helpful if you have a plant that is not as hardy. For Ohio, you might want to try moving it closer to a building in the wintertime. Plant stress also impacts hardiness. Plants in drought conditions or in waterlogged soils may have difficulties hardening off before the winter months. Likewise, too much fertilizer too late in the season may cause a plant to grow and not harden off properly. It's still actively growing as we get into the fall months. Compost and mulch applications can help prevent winter injury from happening to certain plants. Compost helps improve soil structure, so by improving soil structure, we can get better nutrient uptake from plants. Plants are healthier overall and are better able to prepare themselves for the winter months. Mulch will help moderate soil temperatures as well, so mulch will kind of act like a buffer to prevent winter injury. So these are just a few tips that you might want to consider when you're planning your garden for next year.
Hi, my name is Kelly Tillman, and I'm a field crop entomologist at Ohio State University, and today I'm talking about defoliation in soybean. That is, all of the insect species that cause leaf feeding damage and holes in soybean leaves that reduces photosynthesis. Now, there are a lot of different insect species that can cause defoliation in soybean, and sometimes it's not practical to scout and make a threshold decision for all the individual species that might be contributing to your defoliation. So what we recommend at Ohio State is that you use the overall defoliation level in the field as your guide on whether you need to spray or not. So how much defoliation is too much? Well, if you're in the vegetative stages of soybean, that is before bloom, we recommend treating if you get to an average across the field of 30% defoliation. If you are in bloom or in the pod stages, we bump that down to a 20% defoliation recommendation. Now, that's assuming the insects are still present. If the worst offenders have completed their life cycle and flown on, obviously there's no reason to treat. So how do you know what 20% defoliation looks like? Well, it's not really very easy to eyeball, and so we recommend that you use a visual guide. And you can download one from our website at aginsects.osu.edu. This gives you something to compare against to kind of come up with a more accurate assessment. Now, what you're always trying to get is the average of the field. And so there's some tricks you can do with your scouting to help focus in on getting average defoliation. First of all, you don't want to just look on the edges of the field. Often defoliation is worse on the edges than the interior, and if you only look at the edge, you get a mistaken impression of what the field as a whole is doing. Second of all, you don't want to look at just the top part of the canopy. Likewise, often defoliation is a little bit worse at the top of the canopy, not so bad underneath. In this particular example, this plant that we're looking at looks pretty ratty from the top, but if you take that exact same plant, lay it out, and take it apart, you can see that the damage overall is not actually that bad. So how do we scout? I recommend you visit at least 20 places throughout the field, chosen at random, and at each place stop and pick a plant, and you want to take 3 trifoliates from that plant. One from the top of the canopy, one from the middle of the canopy, and one from the bottom of the canopy. This helps you assess what's going on with plants as a whole. Now, so you're left with 3 trifoliates. Again, trying to get at the average condition, you want to throw out the leaf of the 3 that is the most damaged and the least damaged. That leaves you with the mama bear leaf, the one with the middle amount of damage. Once you've collected all of your mama bear leaves, let your eyes run over them and make an assessment against the visual guide to defoliation. Once again, our recommendations are, if you're in vegetative soybean, we recommend treatment at 30% defoliation. And if you're in blossom or pod soybeans, 20% defoliation. I hope this video has helped you, and happy growing.
Specialty Crops team here at OSU South Centers in Piketon, Ohio. Today we'll be visiting a series of crops to give you an update on those, the research that we're doing and the status of those crops. The first fruit crop that we're looking at today is the hardy fig planting here. This crop was established as part of the Specialty Crop Block Grant awarded by the Ohio Department of Agriculture and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. There are two cultivars here inside this tunnel and also behind us in an open field production. These were planted in the early summer of 2018, so this is their third growing season. As you can see, they've established quite nicely inside the tunnel here. The first signs of ripening can be seen on some of the fruit. Fruits will go from a bright green color to a purple or brown on these two varieties. Once they've done this, they start to droop a little bit on the stems, and that's how we know that they're ready to harvest. Harvest will begin soon. Just for reference, today is August 25th. We established 3 cultivars in this study, but one did not survive the first winter here in southern Ohio. The 2 that you see here are Hardy Chicago and Brown Turkey. High tunnels like this one are a good way, an excellent way to protect the root mass of these plants during the winter, which the root mass are what sends up the vigorous growing new shoots that you see here every year, and these new shoots is what bear the figs. Shoots then die back during the winter months and can be cut and removed from the area. We have found that in the outside production with little to no protection, roots of these 2 cultivars can survive fine, but do not have the vigorous early and ongoing growth that you see inside the tunnel. For more information on this crop, please visit southcenters.osu.edu, where you can find our new fact sheet, Growing Hardy Figs in Ohio. I'm standing in our Research and Extension wine grape vineyard. This planting was established as part of the Viticulture Research and Extension Grant awarded by the Ohio Grape Industries Committee, part of the Ohio Department of Agriculture. We have over 10 different red and white wine grape cultivars in this vineyard and 2 more cultivars in another smaller vineyard. We have some French American cultivars including Noiret and Chambourcin, 2 excellent red wine grapes for our area, and Vidal, a white variety that many in our state use to make a delicious, super sweet ice wine with. That's the cluster I'm holding here. We have Cabernet Franc, a vinifera type, and some Minnesota and New York varieties, including but not limited to Frontenac and Aramella, respectively. So far, we've seen that all these varieties are doing pretty well for southern Ohio. This vineyard is used as a tool to not only help growers in the annual management practices that come along with growing wine grapes, but also to do research on what cultivars grow best here in southern Ohio. We have 2 other research vineyards in Ohio that's part of Ohio State, one in Kingsville, and that's up on the lake, and the other one is in Worcester. And we also use this vineyard to measure the quality of the grapes as they become wine. For more information, please visit southcenters.osu.edu. Thanks. Hello, the next crop in this series that we'll look at is the hardy kiwi. This crop was established as part of the Specialty Crop Block Grant awarded by the Ohio Department of Agriculture and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Many of you, upon hearing kiwi, immediately picture the large fuzzy fruit that can be purchased at almost any grocery store. That particular kiwi, Actinidia deliciosa, is native to South China, and production in the United States is mostly concentrated in California, as it is not hardy enough for many other parts of the United States. The kiwi that we are working with here is Actinidia arguta, commonly known as hardy kiwi or kiwi berry in a growing number of circles. It produces a much smaller sized fruit, about the size of a table grape, and does not have any of the fuzz on the skin. Has a similar acidity compared to the larger kiwi, but can be much sweeter. It can take 5, 6, or more years for the plants to reach the stage in which they will produce fruit, and they also require a male pollinator to be planted intermittently with the female, the fruit-bearing plants. Generally, 1 male is recommended for every 6 to 8 female plants. These plants are spaced 10 feet apart, but once established, they can be very vigorous growers. So our recommendation to new growers or a new planting is 15 to 18 feet apart between plants and 15 feet apart between rows. Dave Jackson, a friend of ours and a seasoned kiwi berry grower in Danville, Pennsylvania, has plants mostly spaced 30 feet apart and has some that are even 45 feet apart. A substantial trellis, like you see here, must be constructed because the weight of the vine, once it's fully grown, and the eventual fruit that will be on it is very, very heavy.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Ohio Climate Assessment on this late September day, September 25th, 2020. I'm Aaron Wilson, and this is brought to you by the State Climate Office of Ohio and the Department of Extension at The Ohio State University. So it's been a couple weeks since I came to you through this hydrologic and climate assessment forum, and certainly some interesting things have been happening lately. You know, we've had a terrible wildfire season out west. That wildfire smoke has made it all the way to the East Coast and out to the Atlantic a couple weeks ago. And this photo that I took here is actually a sunrise. We saw this pretty common for a solid week last week of just the hazy sunshine, the milky skies during the afternoon, and these very awkward sunrises and sunset here over a soybean field here in central Ohio. So some pretty interesting things happening of late, even some frost out there over the last couple of weeks. So let's go ahead and dive in to what we've been looking at and what the outlook looks like for the next couple of weeks to month time. So, of course, over the last 7 days, temperatures have been pretty chilly across the region. We've had lows dip down as low as the low 30s in parts of northeast Ohio and east central Ohio in some of those colder valleys, but certainly a lot of us saw overnight lows in the mid 30s to low 40s, and with daytime highs only in the 50s and 60s in some areas of the state. Temperatures over the last 7 days have been anywhere from a couple of degrees below average across northern Ohio to as much as 10 degrees above average in the far southeastern counties. So pretty chilly over this period of time. Over the last 30 days, we've had a few pockets of below average. Most of the state still riding a little bit above average, maybe a degree or two across many areas. And that has really been the case all summer long, heading into the first part of our fall season. No rainfall really to speak of over the last week. This is the multi-sensor precipitation, looking at observed precipitation from the Midwest. We see some rainfall across Minnesota and Wisconsin. To the south here, some tropical moisture coming up from Tropical Storm Beta that came ashore in near Houston a couple of days ago, brought upwards of 15, 20 inches in parts of Houston. But we thought maybe we were going to get a little bit of that moisture pulled up into the region this weekend. It just does not look like that's the case. So no rainfall over the last 7 days. And of course, that's well below average. We should see about 3/4 of an inch of rain per week. Right now, we're actually heading into a drier part of the year, where that average is certainly less than an inch a week. Over the last 30 days, we're still picking up the Labor Day storm from northern Ohio that brought 3 to 6 inches of rainfall for many counties, but we got a couple of dry tongues, that persistent dry area up in northwest Ohio, but also extending from southern Illinois through southern Indiana and now into southwest Ohio, where we see abnormally dry conditions and perhaps some drought conditions creeping back into the region in that part of the state. We can certainly see that playing out in our soil moisture. This is the calculated soil moisture ranking percentile. We're back into that 30 to 70 percentile on this map here, a little bit lower in northwestern Ohio and far southeastern Ohio. And we can see the change over the last month here since the end of August. So again, I mentioned that dry tongue extending from Missouri through southern Illinois, southern Indiana, and now that's creeping into Ohio. This product here on the bottom center part of your screen, this is a satellite product looking at the top 100 centimeters of the soil surface, looking at the soil moisture percentile, and these are really low. These are down below 10 or 20% here across much of Ohio. So at least according to the satellite data, the soil moisture is pretty low. Not totally a bad thing this time of the year, as many of you and many folks across the state really want to get in and get the harvest and the crops out of the field. Our stream flows, there's some isolated low stream flows out there. You can see that on all three maps here for the 7, 14, and 28 day. Orange to red are below average or below the historical percentile. The greens and blues are average to above in terms of that percentile class. So for the most part, stream flows, as they did most of the summer, stayed relatively close to those long-term historical percentiles. A couple of drought products that we look at here. This is the 1-month EDDI. This is the Evaporative Demand Drought Index. Really can hone in on areas that are experiencing, really more atmospheric evaporation versus surplus in moisture. So we're still picking up on those two areas here in Ohio that are particularly low on the EDDI up in Northwest Ohio and also in Southwest Ohio. So these are the areas we're watching right now. And that really matches on the Quick Drought Response Index as well. These two areas showing up dry over the last couple of weeks, indicative of areas that could be heading into drought. Now, we're certainly getting into that time of year where we've got cooler temperatures, less evaporation out there, so drought's not likely to expand very quickly, but certainly lingering dry conditions are prevalent across the state. We can see that on this week's U.S. Drought Monitor, the dry tongue with some counties up here in Northwest Ohio still in that D1 moderate drought category, and the abnormally dry conditions that are lingering along I-70 and south in Southwest Ohio. Up in the upper right, this is the 4-week change, the 1-month change in classes of Drought Monitor here. So some of our D1 has disappeared, but a little bit of expansion there over Preble County, Butler County, Northern Warren, Montgomery, and Western Greene County as well. Now, what about the weather for the week ahead? Do we see dry conditions continuing or some rainfall? Well, a little bit of both here. So today we're looking at pretty much high pressure and control as it has been for much of the last 10 days. We've got a cold front up to our north and west. We've got the remnants of Tropical Storm Beta there moving across Georgia and the Carolinas. Again, we're not likely to see any of that moisture now this weekend. So high pressure will remain in control. As high pressure slides off a little bit to our south and east, southerly flow will bump our high temperatures this weekend up into the low to mid 80s ahead of this cold front. That starts to move toward our region on Sunday. And then starting late Sunday through next week, we're going to have a series of cold fronts move through the region. It's going to increase our opportunities for rainfall, although I'm not expecting anything too heavy, but certainly a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch is possible. Again, a series of cold fronts. And behind this cold front, we're going to usher in some really chilly air for this time of the year, probably highs back in the 50s and 60s, overnight lows in the 30s and 40s, and perhaps we're going to talk about some widespread frost and freeze conditions as we head into that first week of October. We haven't really had early frost and freeze for a while. Much of our falls throughout the last decade have been warm and wet. But with those dry soils out there and low humidities, those temperatures at night can really fall. And so we're going to be paying attention to that now as we head into the first week of October. Conditions, again, don't look extremely wet. We could pick up, a 1/2 inch to 1 inch across our far northwestern counties. Again, that's an area that's been dry all summer long, so they could use a little moisture, and less than a 1/2 inch over much of the state. On the right-hand side, you see this week's forecasted evaporation. Again, now we're under 1 inch, less than 1 inch evaporation per week now, about 7 to 8 tenths. Kind of matches what we see on a weekly precipitation. So the water balance, again, any rainfall that's falling now, in excess of that 7 or 8 tenths is going to help recharge some of our soil moisture. The latest 8 to 14 day outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, again, really strong probability of seeing cooler than average temperatures between October 2nd and October 8th. Normal highs for this time of the year are getting down around 70 to 75, maybe upper 60s across the north. Overnight lows in that upper 40s to 50 to mid 50s across the state. So we're probably going to run about 10 degrees cooler than this, perhaps a little bit more in our overnight lows across the region. So very chilly heading into that first week of October. And it looks like much of the country is going to experience drier, abnormally dry conditions for October 2nd through the 8th, according to the Climate Prediction Center. Looking out for the month of October. Now, this was made at the half-month point through September. At that point, they were looking at a greater probability of above-average temperatures, but I think we're going to hedge a little bit cooler than this through much of the month, just given the first couple of weeks in the forecast that we're seeing now in the models. Again, it does look like much of the country, especially the southern tier of states, will see those drier than average conditions extending up here into the Ohio Valley. So that bodes well for harvest this season. I think it's going to be pretty dry and efficient season for farmers to get out, pull the crops out of the field. May have to watch for some field fires or combine fires that may have an elevated risk with those dry soils and dry temperatures dry conditions out there. But certainly I think harvest is going to be a little bit more smooth than it has been, over the last several falls. Looking at the ag highlights, according to Cheryl Turner and NASS, we had a decrease in the amount of short to very short topsoil moisture, still indicating improvements in those drought conditions across the state. There were 6.4 suitable days for field work, ending on the 21st of September, with a lot of silage being brought in, obviously cutting of hay, third and fourth cutting of alfalfa and things. And most crops look pretty good, fair to good conditions and really ahead of the 5-year average. So to kind of sum things up, with the drought monitor, we've got D0 to D1 coverage has shrunk to about 18% of the state now. It has been cooler than average, which probably has kept drought from expanding a little bit more, but it's been very dry. So I expect those dry conditions to linger throughout much of October, given the forecast of drier than average conditions. This week, we've got a warm weekend. A series of cold fronts next week will increase our opportunities for rainfall and bring on much, much cooler temperatures. Hopefully, everyone had an opportunity to check out Farm Science Review live this year at fsr.osu.edu. If you'd like to find some more information that provided through the State Climate Office, feel free to visit go.osu.edu/FSR-SCU. You can find some great information, including a little bit of historical analysis from Molly Caron, and during the show we provided some live observations from these two weather stations on the grounds there of the Molly Caron during Farm Science Review 2020. So with that, we'll go ahead and close out today's program. You can find some more information at SCU's website, climate.osu.edu. I always like to thank all of our regional and federal partners across the region, the great state climatologists from Michigan, South Dakota, and everywhere else in between that help us bring a lot of information together for the Midwest, and certainly the folks at NOAA and the USDA Midwest Climate Hub. So until next time, please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and come back and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.